This is part 2 of explaining the lore of the BFDI AU known as Goiky adventure. The last video explained the lore from 1863 to 1940, so we'll be starting from 1940 till 1968. But before that, I will explain the event I failed to mention in part 1. In 1902, the United States underwent a federal change, renaming itself to the United Federation. Starting in late 1940, after the National Socialists in Germany were heavily demolished by the UK, France, Poland, and the Soviets, peace in Europe remained until 1945, when the Americans started building what they called the A-bomb. Since the Soviets had spies in the UF, they were also able to build an A-bomb by reverse engineering the plans for it and tested it. The result of this started the Cold War, which lasted until 1991. Several radio signals, which came from a star system that was 4 light years away, hit Earth and was picked up by multiple satellites. The radio signal had sounds that were similar to pulses. They figured out it must be similar to Morse code, but translating the pulses all resulted in a few, at the time, unrelated words. The words were ominous to the people who picked it up. After the takeover of Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, the Baltic states, and Yugoslavia in 1941, the Soviets installed communist regimes in those. Several revolts happened, such as in 1956, when a huge revolution happened in Hungary and lasted about 15 days before Soviet tanks plus troops came in and brutally oppressed the movement. During this, the leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stonewall, died due to a stroke, and Nikita Khrushchev succeeded him. Communism began spreading throughout the world, such as in Cuba and many newly founded African countries. This was a worry for the Western Bloc, as communism was a threat to them. As you know, this made the United Kingdom, Goiky, and France develop nuclear weapons. After Stonewall's death, the People's Republic of China began to fall apart as the leader, Mao Zedong, lost support with his enforced policies. The nation started to lean towards a new ideology titled technocracy. However, this didn't plan out until Mao's death, but we'll get back to that later. Several more signals coming from outer space came and went, and they figured that this had either been a radio burst or a transmission from an advanced civilization. Decolonization started to happen as the Eastern Bloc began putting out anti-imperialist ideas, as imperialism only benefits the colonizer. This made the United Federation and Goiky force the 2 most powerful imperial nations, France and the United Kingdom, to decolonize or face consequences. As new countries were being formed, issues were arising. The Red Scare was still happening. As the Western Bloc feared communists infiltrating their systems, many were executed and even tortured. Better dead than red, some would say. Skipping to the 1960s, the civil rights movement gained even more traction, as people of different skin color were treated unjustly like barbarians. Same with objects, as despite having a 1% increase in intelligence on the same spectrum as humans, objects were seen as aliens and unwanted. This culminated in several protests, leading to the Civil Rights Bill being passed. This also hurt the United Federation, as despite being the leader of the free world, they hadn't treated everyone with the same amount of freedom. While in Cuba, a communist revolution took over with Fidel Castro as the leader. The UFA decided to try to overthrow the leader, but failed and do a failed invasion. But that led to Cuba getting nuclear weapons from the USSR, severely heightening tensions, and luckily that didn't happen as the ballistic missiles were removed from Cuba. This also forced the UF to remove them from Turkey and Greece. The space race, one of the most pivotal moments for intelligent life on Earth, was you guessed it, a space race to see if the United Federation or the Soviet Union could kill the other faster. And to see what Earthlings could do in a new environment. The first few specimens were sent out to space. such as a Soviet dog, an American monkey, and other non-intelligent species. Then the Soviets sent their first cosmonaut into orbit, making the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the U.S. Space Agency, work very, very hard to get their men in orbit. Then came the moon. All of the world were in amazement when the UF made it to the moon first, winning the space race. But however, this space race made humanity's first contact with an alien specimen. In the distance, an astronaut looked at what would have looked like a walking number, and it was alive. The Algebralians are from a star system called Alpha Centauri, a system that is 4 light years away from our own sun. They come from the planet Proxima Centauri b, an Earth-like exoplanet that is in the habitable zone of the system's main star. According to them, they have been observing us ever since the fall of what they called First Pax Roma, what we know as the Roman Empire. However, they did not come to peace. The integer explained to the astronaut that they needed to prepare for an invasion in a finite amount of time. This was also broadcast on television, sparking panic among quite literally everyone. This caused all of the world's governments to band together to defeat the menace that was the Algebralians. But that's for another time. See you in part 3, where I explain everything from 1969 to the present day.